Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you here. And so we're approaching the holiday season. Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and New Year's. A time often of heightened emotion. For some people, anticipation and joy. For other people, dread. And for many people, sort of a mixture of both. When and each of the holidays has a certain theme. It might be gratitude. It might be giving or renewal. So last week when we talked about the miracle of Buddha's toe on the earth, transforming the Saha world into a Pure Land. It's an indication of how, with movement of the mind, these events, these phenomena can be transformed. So one of the, I just like to mention when we're all together here that recently the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 70, which is located in Moberly Correctional Center, sent us a generous donation to Heartland Zen. The donations to Heartland Zen are used for various things. Nowadays, mostly postage, keeping the UPS box going, mailings to prisoners, payments to or honorariums to our guest speakers, and printing costs for the resource directory, the Start Here resource directory. So, so this gift, well, unexpected, is appreciated, and likewise, any donations to Heartland Zen are not expected, but appreciated, especially during this time when it may be difficult for many people. So when we left off, we had introduced this character, and I know we've talked about this Vimalakirti Sutra recently, and I hope I'm not belaboring it too much, but you know, I had occasion to give a talk about it actually this morning to people who were located in either France or Italy or the UK or California, and it was an occasion for me to kind of reread it again, and I found so much there that I had missed before that I can't resist talking a little bit more about it, and if I hope you will find it helpful. But when we left off, Vimalakirti had been introduced, and he had talked about his illness being an essential a ploy, to charitably speaking, you'd call it skillful means, to get people to come to him so he could share the Dharma with them. And the Buddha is kind of aware. The Buddha's across town in a park, but the Buddha is aware of what Vimalakirti is doing. They communicate telepathically, so they kind of each know. And the Buddha would like some of his followers to go over and derive the benefit of meeting with Vimalakirti. So he, one by one, approaches them with the proposition that they should go speak to Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness. Well, he starts off with Shariputra, and much out of character, Shariputra declines. He doesn't think he's competent to speak to Vimalakirti regarding his illness, and this is why the Buddha said to Shariputra, "You must go visit Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness." But Shariputra replied to the Buddha in these words, "World-honored one, I am not competent to visit him and inquire about his illness. Why? Because I recall one occasion in the past when I was sitting in quiet meditation under a tree in the forest. And at that time, Vimalakirti approached me and said, 'Ah, Shariputra, you should not assume that this sort of sitting is true quiet sitting. Quiet sitting means that in this threefold world, you manifest neither body nor will. This is quiet sitting. Not rising out of your samadhi of complete cessation and yet showing yourself in the ceremonies of daily life. This is quiet sitting. Not abandoning the principles of the way and yet showing yourself in the activities of a common mortal. This is quiet sitting. Your mind not fixed on internal things and yet not engaged with externals either. This is quiet sitting. Unmoved by sundry theories, but practicing the 37 elements of the way, this is quiet sitting. Entering nirvana without having put an end to earthly desires. This is quiet sitting. If you can do this kind of sitting, you will merit the Buddha's seal of approval. At that time, world-honored one, when I heard him speak these words, I remained silent, for I had no way to reply to him. This is why I am not competent to visit him and inquire about his illness. So, in a way, Shariputra had been humiliated by Vimalakirti, as Vimalakirti makes the point that it's not enough to just sit under a tree in the forest. So this is the first of a long series of cases in which the various disciples and bodhisattvas accompanying the Buddha decline to go visit Vimalakirti. In one such instance, the bodhisattva upholder of the age, who is very upright and attends to all the precepts diligently, he's sitting in his room minding his own business, and all of a sudden Mara appears, but Mara is disguised as Indra. So Mara is kind of a tempter, and Indra is sort of a divine being. And so the upholder of the age thinks that Indra is arriving, this divinity, and along with him, 12,000 maidens playing music. And this Indra-like character says, please accept these 12,000 heavenly maidens, upholder of the age. But he declined, of course, he's a monk, and he said that would be not appropriate. But Vimalakirti appears and says, oh, I'll accept them. And he takes in the 12,000 heavenly maidens and teaches them the delight of the Dharma as opposed to the delight of the senses, and then sends them back to the hell where the Mara resides, so that they can in turn teach the Dharma to others. And upholder of the age declines to go inquire about Vimalakirti's illness because he thinks that Vimalakirti kind of upstaged him there. But finally, Vimalakirti asks Manjushri. And Manjushri reluctantly agrees to go talk to Vimalakirti and inquire about his illness. And he arrives over at Vimalakirti's house, but he's not alone because all of these 32,000 bodhisattvas and 8,000 other beings and and along with all the heavenly beings and devas and everyone is curious about what's going to happen when Manjushri visits Vimalakirti. Manjushri being the bodhisattva of wisdom, and Vimalakirti being this extremely wise layperson. So they want to see the spectacle, basically. And so they're all accompanying him, and there's magically there's plenty of room in this little room where Vimalakirti is lying for all of them. And Manjushri and Vimalakirti exchange pleasantries, and they sort of battle wits a little bit. And then Vimalakirti, or Manjushri, gets to the point, and he says, layman, this illness of yours, can you endure it? Is the treatment perhaps not making it worse than better? The world-honored one countless times has made solicitations, inquiries concerning you. Layman, what is the cause of this illness? Has it been with you long? And how can it be cured? Vimalakirti replies, this illness of mine is born out of ignorance and feelings of attachment. Because all living beings are sick, therefore I am sick. If all living beings are relieved of sickness, then my sickness will be mended. Why? Because the bodhisattva, for the sake of living beings, enters the realm of birth and death. And because he or she is in the realm of birth and death, he suffers illness. If living beings can gain release from illness, then the bodhisattva will no longer be ill. It is like the case of a rich man who has only one child. If the child falls ill, then the father and mother too will be ill. But if the child's illness is cured, the father and mother too will be cured. The Bodhisattva is like this, for he loves living beings as though they were his children. So this conversation between Vimalakirti and Manjushri continues. And Manjushri is interested in learning from Vimalakirti and asks him a question. He asks Vimalakirti, how should a bodhisattva go about comforting and instructing another bodhisattva who is ill? I think we oftentimes are in this situation. We encounter someone who has suffered some sort of great misfortune or illness. And how do we go about comforting them? Well, Vimalakirti replies in an unusual way. He says, tell him or her about the impermanence of the body, but do not tell him to despise or turn away from the body. Tell him about the sufferings of the body, but do not tell him to strive for nirvana or release. Tell him that the body is without ego, but urge him to teach and guide living beings. Tell him of the emptiness of the body, but do not tell him of its final extinction. Tell him to repent of former offenses, but do not tell him to consign them to the past. Tell him to use his own illness as a means of sympathizing with the illness of others. For he should understand that suffering throughout the countless kalpas of this past existence, and should think how he can bring benefit to all beings. Tell him to recall the good fortune he has won through religious practice, to concentrate on a life of purity and not to give way to gloom or worry. He or she should cultivate constant diligence, striving to become a king of physicians who can heal the ailments of the assembly. This is how a bodhisattva should comfort and instruct a bodhisattva who is ill, as to make him or her feel happy. He goes on a bit later. Once one has understood the origin of illness, one may do away with the thought of an I or ego and the thought of other living beings. To do so, one should call up the thought of phenomena, thinking to oneself, it is simply that various phenomena have come together to form this body. It has appeared simply because the phenomena appeared, and it will vanish simply because phenomena vanish. And these phenomena are none of them known to one another. When they appear, they do not say, I have appeared. And when they vanish, they do not say, I have vanished. Then, in order to wipe out the thought of phenomena, the ailing bodhisattva should think to himself, this thought or concept of phenomena too is a form of topsy-turvy thinking. And topsy-turvy thinking can lead to great misfortune. I must rid myself of it. But how to rid myself of it? By ridding myself of thoughts of I and mine, which means ridding myself of dualism. So a discussion about illness and about how to deal with it and how to deal with the illness of others. Manju or Vimalakirti doesn't offer the usual sort of advice for comfort. And he's a little bit jarring in some ways. I mean, there's a certain shock tactic that Vimalakirti repeatedly employs. When someone's meditating under a tree, you usually leave them alone. You wouldn't think of going up and sort of walking around making comments, berating them for not doing something else, for not engaging with the world. And when a monk is declining the company of 12,000 heavenly maidens playing music, you wouldn't think of countering that by accepting the maidens and humiliating the monk. And likewise, offering comfort to someone who is ill, you wouldn't really stress, perhaps, the impermanence of the body, the insubstantiality of this existence. You wouldn't start talking, perhaps, about causes and conditions, but maybe you would. But I'd be interested in thoughts about how all of this seems. Some people at this point might think Vimalakirti is kind of a jerk. But what is he trying to do, and what are his motivations? And what can we learn from him? What is the main point so far? So I guess I'll leave you with those reflections and any other responses, anything that resonated with you about these stories. And we'll get back together in a few minutes. We'll perhaps divide up into groups, maybe 3 groups, and come back together in about 10 or 15 minutes.